Hi everybody, it's Kelly here. I like to make this banana loaf in a bundt pan, so there's quite a bit, but if you don't have a bundt pan, you can divide it into two and it should work just fine. I found the recipe online, I don't know when, several years ago. I've been making this bundt loaf for ages and ages and ages. I've tweaked it a little bit too here and there, so it's kind of my own recipe now. So in a medium-sized bowl, like that, there's 3.5 cups of flour. And if I do this plain with just the bananas, I like to put nutmeg in it because nutmeg and bananas go very nicely together. That's a relatively generous 1/2 teaspoon of nutmeg, but you don't have to use it if you don't want to. Sometimes I tweak it and I put chocolate chips in it. You can put nuts in it if you want. You know, a cup's worth. I just kind of take a couple handfuls of chocolate chips out of the bag and go in it, into the wet stuff. You could also use Skor bits. They're like buttered toffee bits. I think my American friends might know them as Heath bits, because Skor bars and Heath bars are sort of similar, so tweak it however you want. Anyway, your dry stuff, 3.5 cups of flour. Sometimes I put a bit of whole wheat, like maybe the 1/2 cups whole wheat. This is all totally all purpose for right now. And then there's 4 teaspoons of baking powder, 1 teaspoon of salt. I'll put the recipe down below too. And 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. So that's all the dry stuff, and you got to get that all mixed up. This requires 2 cups of mashed bananas. Now, we always find we have a few bananas that are getting a little bit brown and yucky, so I toss them in the freezer, and when I have a big pile of them, I make loaf. So I've got a big plate full. This is 7. Sometimes you need 6 depending on how many, like how fat they are or how big they are. And they come out nice and gushy from the freezer. So I just take a sharp knife. I've got actually just a steak knife off my kitchen table, and you cut the end off. And then you can squeeze it like so. I know it looks kind of gross, but into your measurer. And I always do 7 just in case, because even if I don't have, like if there's a little bit too much, my dog Maximus loves banana. So if I have a little bit more than 2 cups, I just scoop off a little bit and I stick it into a bowl, and then he has a little treat. So just nick the ends off however you want. You could use scissors. I just, like decapitate it basically with a steak knife like so. And then squeeze it on out. And once you've got them all done, here, I'll just move that out of the way so you can kind of see better. They stay kind of chunky, so if you want, you can take a fork and you can just kind of like squish it if you want it chunky. But I like mine mushed down a bit more, so I take my potato masher and I just go to it and I just squish them down, and you can kind of twist it, and then they go less lumpy and more smooth. I just kind of figured that out by happenstance. So that's how to get the bananas ready for the wet part of the recipe. All right, here we are onto the wet part. A bigger bowl, 4 eggs. I like to start with a whisk, and then I go on to one of these kind of scooping spatula type deals. It just is easier to get the cake out later. So just get your eggs going a bit. Sorry, I'm wiggling. My phone braced on my island is not the most stable. And then 2/3 cup of oil, vegetable oil. I use canola most of the time because it's kind of inert and goes with everything. There's not extra flavor, and it happens to be Canadian. So support my local farmers. 2/3 cup. In we go. Although not called for, I do like to do a splodge of vanilla. And I do mean a splodge. I don't measure it. I just go flip like so. I have no idea what that is. 2 teaspoons, I don't know, something like that. To taste, I guess you could say. And 1 1/3 cups of granulated sugar. Not confectioner icing, regular rolled sugar. In you go. And there's that. And just give that a little mixy around. At this point, if you were going to do the chocolate chips or Skor bits or raisins or cranberries or, I don't know, whatever, I usually put them in the wet. If you're going to do nuts, they might look better in the dry, but Then again, if you're going to do raisins and cranberries, they might work better with the dry stuff too. I've never put raisins in it, but I guess you could. You can always experiment and let me know how it goes. Okay, now my banana goo actually happened to be a perfect 2 cups, so Max is out of luck. So that goes in there like so. And now the whisk gets a bit cumbersome because the bananas are too thick and gloopy, so bang all the little goodies off the end of it. And chuck it behind me in the sink to wash. And get this doodad out and give it a good stir. You can see it just sort of looks like this brown kind of gooey mess. If you don't put the vanilla in, obviously it doesn't look as brown. I suppose if you wanted to flavor it up with some other kind of extract, you could. Never tried that before. What goes good with bananas? I don't know. Orange, maybe? Might overpower it. There's another experiment waiting to happen. Okay, so right now you have this gooey mess in this bowl, and you have all the dry stuff in the other bowl. Be right back. Okay, now take your dry stuff, which I just took a fork, you can use any old thing, and mix it around so it's not like bits at a time. You gotta have it homogeneous. Is that the right word? Yeah, I think that's the right word. Sorry, English is not my best forte when I'm trying to bake. Okay, so half at a time, approximately. Just put that dry stuff in there. Get it going a bit. This is pretty forgiving. You can kind of mix it quite a bit and it doesn't really get like too tough or anything like that, like some of these quick breads do. It's more to do it half at a time so you don't sort of have flour kind of flying everywhere. And that's where the spatula stirrer comes in handy, because you can kind of scrape and stir at the same time. And just get a little bit in there. You could use a regular old spatula too, it doesn't really matter. Okay, now we'll put the rest in. I just tell you what I like to do and what works. This is one of my go-to recipes. As soon as there's plenty of bananas, we make this up. And it's like there's only 3 of us in the house right now because, as you might have seen in my previous videos, my son's in college in Alberta. But my daughter is a vet tech at one of the local vet clinics in town. And they are always very appreciative of treats. So likely, we'll have a little bit of this today, once it's done. And then my daughter will take the rest of it to the clinic tomorrow when she goes to work. And I'm sure it will be gone by lunchtime. So, just make sure you don't have any flour bits on the bottom. Give it a good scrape. I know this is the boring part, but I'm going to get it in the pan in a minute. I want to shut the phone off. Okay, there we go. So that's what it looks like. Kind of thick. That's what it's supposed to be. Now I'm on my own, so I'm going to have to scoop this very carefully into my bundt pan. But if you have a partner or somebody around, I've used my son before, somebody can hold the bowl and then you can kind of scrape as you go. But there's just me, so we're going to go to it. Now, I have sprayed my bundt pan with some of that non-stick spray stuff. You can just butter it with butter or margarine or whatever you want. Doesn't matter, but it has to be greased, okay? And now, see, that's the thing where sometimes another person comes in handy, because the bowl gets a little on the heavy side. So, I don't know if you can see what I'm doing here. My arm's probably in the way. There we go. So you take, see, again with the spatula scoopy spoon, I can kind of scoop blobs. Even though it's not a perfect spoon, it still scoops decently well, and just kind of blop it in there. And then I'll have to turn this. But if you have somebody holding a bowl, you can kind of turn and scoop and turn and scoop. But when you're on your own, you just got to go for it. There, and when you get down a little bit and it's not quite so heavy, then you can sort of just scrape it off. Turn the bundt pan a little bit. scrape it down from the top so you're not missing any of the good bits. Oh, I just forgot to look at the timing too. Sorry about that. I'm going to have to run over and double check before we shut this video off here. My apologies in advance, everybody. I was not as organized as I thought. Okay, so there we go. Your oven is at 350. Have your rack kind of in the middle. Okay, so scrape off your goodies. You want all of your dough, not leave little bits on your spoon or in your bowl. And my apologies in advance for the noise, but I kind of like to do a little, just to make sure it's settled down. Excuse me for a moment. Okay. The cooking time is 50 minutes. I tend to put my timer on for about 48, and then I do the toothpick just to make sure it's good. Sometimes you need the full 50, sometimes you need 48, sometimes you need 45. Depends on your oven. You're just going to have to eyeball it. It should be nice and golden, and when you stick the toothpick in, it should come out clean. It's okay if it's a little bit on the moist side, but not globs of stuff on your toothpick. So you can err on the side of slightly moister if you want, and it won't really hurt it too much. I've sort of done it both. I've erred on the side of, oh crap, I forgot it in the oven, and it was a little bit more done and it was still fine. So in she goes for 50, and I'll show you what it looks like later. The 48 minutes that I had in the oven was perfect. See, it's nice and brown, golden. Let it sit in the pan on a rack for at least half an hour, if not more. I'm going to see if I can loosen it up. I have got one of these flat spatulas. It came with my knife set. That's usually what I use. You could probably use an offset spatula or even a knife. Let me just, hold on, sorry about my hand. I gotta grab the phone better. There we go. Okay. Now, just kind of like stick it down there and just make sure it's loosened up enough. Once it's cool enough, it usually just comes away from the side enough anyway, but a little help never hurts it, just in case. Now, there's a bit sticky areas. And just do the middle too, just a little bit. There's like a stuck-on bit there, that might be a sticky spot, just in case. About like so. And I'm going to let it sit a little bit longer, and then I will pop it out and flip it over a little bit and just have it sitting on the rack. There we go, done.